Hi again. This is John. Second long delayed part of my little series on useful chord shapes to play as bar chords. I already did one lesson on the E shapes, and hopefully you've seen that, and then this one will make a little more sense. And this we're going to be talking about the A shapes. Now, what's the difference between a shape and a chord? A shape is simply a pattern of fingers on the fingerboard that makes a chord, but that you can move around. So as you play it in different places on the neck, your fingers haven't changed their positioning relative to each other, but you're now playing a new chord. So today, here's what we're going to look at. The following chords that use variations of the A shape. And I'll just put this here so I don't forget. Okay, first one, A major. You're probably pretty familiar with this chord. Three fingers is a standard way to play it, all on the second fret, going from the D string, the G to the G string, to the B string. Sorry, there we go. There's also a cheat. I mean, you can certainly learn that pattern and play it as a bar chord, but as you can see, it's a bit of a struggle. If you simply put your index finger flat across the four top strings, including the E, like this, technically that's an A major ninth chord, but you can, just like you do with a power chord, not play all the strings, just play the middle strings and leave out the high E. But it actually doesn't sound bad. It's a variation that jazz players often use. So, and the advantage of that is when you're working around on the neck, you can switch pretty fast between the E shape and the A shape using that straight across technique I showed you, only this time you have your index finger is the bar across all the strings, and then you'd have, I'm using my third finger to produce the A major chord, well, the A major ninth. So this is the chord of A major using the E shape on the 5th fret. And if you don't understand how that works, it's really simple. Each fret is a half tone. So if you want to take a chord shape and play it as a bar chord a little higher up, you count the frets. So here's E major. Now I go 1, 2, 3, bar. That's G. How do I know it's G? Because I went from E 3 half tones up. E to F, F to F sharp to G. And that's the secret of why bar chords are so useful. Okay, so back to my example. I'm playing A major using the E shape with a bar on the 5th fret. Now when I do this, that's a D. Technically a D ninth, but what the heck, it works. And when I move it up 2 frets, that's an E. So standard blues progression or rock and roll progression, without moving your hand very far on the keyboard, on the fretboard, pardon me, you can play it like this. So I'm using that A shape with the finger right across the top 4 strings I showed you to get the D and the E, and then back to the A major. Okay, so A major, 2 ways to finger it. If you're going to use bar chords, I strongly suggest you learn to do this because it's easier and faster than getting all your fingers up there where the frets are starting to get close together. All right, next is A minor. Again, a pretty common chord in a lot of music, folk, blues, rock, you name it. Standard way to finger it is this. Your index finger on the B, the next 2 fingers on the G and the E on the D on the 2nd fret, making the chord of E minor, which is C, A, and E, A being the root note. Okay, but what I'm going to suggest you practice is learning to play that with leaving your index finger free and using your next 3 fingers, same shape, just different fingering like this. Okay, so suppose that somebody asks you to play a chord you're not familiar with very often, it isn't used a lot in standard rock and blues and so on, and that would be a C sharp minor. Well, where the heck is that? Remember, each time you move the pattern up, the chord goes up half a tone. So here's our A minor. A sharp minor sounds awful with the open strings. B minor, C minor, and now C sharp minor. I'm going to bar it so it'll sound like a proper chord. That's C sharp minor. So I went up 4 frets, or 4 half tones from A to B, B to C, C to C sharp, and here we are. Whoops, sorry, C sharp minor. Okay, so that's the minor pattern. Next is dominant sevenths, used a lot in blues. 2 common ways, well actually 3 common ways with the bar, but let's stick to 2 right now. To play this are with using just 2 fingers. So I've got my middle finger on the D string, 2 frets up, which makes it an E. I leave the G open, and that takes a little practice so your other fingers aren't touching and damping that note so you can't hear it. And then my 4th finger is on the B string, 2nd fret, which is a C sharp. So there's the one way to finger it. The other way is this. You use your finger again to bar over the top 4 strings. And then your 4th finger goes on the E, 3rd fret, to give you a G, because the notes in dominant 7th are A, C sharp, and G. So if you're going to be barring it, it's easier just to use the 2 notes. And again, you've got to change your fingers around a little because you need your index finger for the bar. So here you go. Same shape. And what chord was that? Well, here's A dominant 7th. This 2 frets up would be B dominant 7th, C dominant 7th, D dominant 7th. Now you can also play it that way, of course, but I'm just giving an example. So suppose somebody wanted a C sharp dominant 7th. You want your finger on the 4th fret, as I did for the C sharp minor. Just finger the chord. Not getting one right. That's better. Okay, and there's your C sharp dominant 7th. Okay, that's 3 out of 5. Now, slightly jazzier chords, but still not that uncommon. People like Pink Floyd, the Beatles use these chords all the time. A major 7th. Now, what's a major 7th? It's a major chord where the A, one of the root notes in it, drops down just half a tone to what would be the 7th note in the scale. Now, you'd think that would sound all wrong, and it's quite a nice chord, kind of in between a minor and a major in feeling. There it goes. So, major chord, major 7th chord. Hear that change? So what's the fingering? Well, it's 3 fingers. I've got my 3rd finger on the D for an E. I've got my index finger on the G for a G sharp on the 1st fret. And then I've got my 4th finger on the B string for C sharp. All right, now again, I'm going to revise the fingering to do that as a bar chord. So just for the heck of it, suppose someone said they want you to play a C major 7th. Okay, so here's our major 7th pattern with my next 3 fingers, leaving the index free again. So there's A major 7th, this would be B major 7th. Sounds better, all right. There's C major 7th, 3 frets up, okay? So same idea. And this chord actually sounds good in some positions just played with the open strings, like that. But of course in others it'll sound like garbage because you're not fretting all the strings, so some are going to be out of tune. Listen to this. Not so good, right? All right, so that was A major 7th. And finally, the minor 7th. And again, this is a chord you'll hear with a lot of slightly more sophisticated rock and pop, and minor 7th are used in jazz a lot. So it's both a minor, so it has that half tone drop on the third note of the scale, half tone down. And it's a 7th because it has that slightly wilder, bluesy sounding. In the case of the scale of E, it would be G. That's a half tone, a full tone below the root note. So you go down from an A to a G for one note. So A minor 7th, again, there's two ways to finger it. One way is this, so you make an A minor, like that. Then you put your pinky on the 3rd fret of the top string, the E string, to get the G. And there you go. But for bar chords, there's a simpler way to do it. It only takes 2 fingers. One of them is on the is on the B string, 1st fret, which gives you a C there. And then the other one's on the A string, the D string, to give you an E. And there's the A minor 7th with a different fingering. And that's the fingering you'll use for a bar chord, because it'd be pretty hard to have 4 fingers making the A minor 7th chord plus another one barring it. I wouldn't recommend it. So let's take that shape, change our fingers around and try it up here. There's a minor 7th, that's a D minor 7th, and then here's an E minor 7th. Somebody says F minor 7th, well that sounds like a tough chord to play, but actually it's not with this method. Okay, so let's review those shapes quickly. A major, and in each case I'm going to use the fingering I said was easiest. So there's A major, A minor, A dominant 7th, A major 7th, and A minor 7th. Now let's try all those on the 5th fret, which would actually make them chords in the key of E. So here, in the key of D. A, B, C, D. That's 5 semitones up the neck, as I said. So here's the first one, D, and then what do we got? D minor, D dominant 7th, that's better, D major 7th, and D minor 7th. So you see how there I was able, by using my shapes and knowing how many semitones up I've gone from the open position, I was able to play 5 different variations of a D chord, all without moving my barring finger. So once you've learned these bar chords and these shapes, you can start to experiment and have a lot of fun just with unlikely combinations. Like one I like is like this. So this is going to go from a C to a D with a slide, and if you do play your A shape this way with that finger right across, it's easy to slide it. See what I'm doing there? So I suggest you practice these shapes and then start to mix it up. Use the E shapes and then use the A shapes. And because those chords are so often used together in blues and rock and roll, you can play them lots of places on the neck and they're going to sound good. Like up here I'm actually playing a B. It's a E-shaped barred on the 7th fret. So I could make that a B 7th. A bit wilder sounding. That's an E. F sharp. So Practice your bar chords, get good at them, you'll be able to play just about any song. Good luck.